I remember every night for the next 6 months dreaming about that first contest. I'd wake up, I'd feel the farmer's handles in my hands, or I'd feel the stones, or I could smell the tacky. I mean, I knew once I did that contest, this is where I was going. When you take ownership of your life, no matter what the hell has happened, that's when you take power over your life. That's when you take control. You know, early on, I wanted to get big, so I'd eat peanut butter and bread sandwiches, sit there and watch World's Strongest Man reruns and just go through half a loaf. Then it graduated to...
This picture, you're like sitting there like it's all dry and like you gotta keep shoving down more and more milk.
Milk is good. The milk and the peanut.
Yeah. One way that you can find gratitude in the worst experiences of your life is, you know, when you die, at least you didn't live a boring life. You sucked the juice out of life. You squeezed the juice out of life.
PowerProject family, how's it going? Now on this podcast, we've talked to so many professionals, coaches, doctors about the importance of getting your blood work done. I've gotten it done, Mark's gotten it done, Andrew's gotten it done. We know what's going on under the hood, and we know that we are healthy and heading in the right direction. But we know some people who have gotten their blood work done and they have been healthy and they've had to get treatment for certain things, and they're glad that they did. And that's why we've partnered with Merrick Health, owned by Derek from More Plates, More Dates. Now, Merrick Health is the premium TRT clinic that no matter what you get done, no matter what tests you get done, Merrick Health gives you plans for you. They don't give you cookie cutter plans like a lot of other telehealth clinics do, where you'll give your blood work and they'll just give you what they give to everybody. They give you specific plans for you, your specific levels. And that is extremely important. Andrew, can you tell the people more about it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to MarrickHealth.com. That's MAREK Health.com. And whether you're interested in HRT or you just want to get some labs done, use promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off all your labs. Again, MarrickHealth.com. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Yeah, those little clicks that you feel like if you ever like torn a carpet before or torn something like that before, it's that, but it's inside your body.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt all the time. Sometimes it might hurt, but like it's real slight, but you know you fucked yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great metaphor.
Well, I had a pec tear. That was my first, I guess, real tear. It was like a piece of tape and a big rubber band snapping. Does that sound all right there?
I think that's good, yeah.
All right. Yeah, it just peeled off and then a snap. Like, oh shit, that wasn't right.
How did that happen?
Dumbbell incline bench. So I'm missing, pretty much all of my upper pec. It tore off. So
Holy
30 degrees is the perfect spot. Not 45, not below, but 30. That was perfect because it ripped it right off.
How heavy was it?
150-pound dumbbells. I was going to do 2 sets of 10. Fuck. And this is one of those things.
Just a little warm up.
I was going to do 2 sets of 10 and it just didn't feel right. So I was like, fuck it. Let's just do 1 set of 15, call it a day. Rep number 12.
Oh, if you would have stuck to your plan too, right?
Yeah. So that was one of those hard lessons.
You got hurt recently, you were just saying, after trying to come back after a long time, after a long break?
Well, I've been hurt several times after coming back after a long break. But, leading up to World's Strongest Man last year, I strained my hamstring. I was training in a way that had me teetering on the edge of injury and being the best I've ever been. And 2 weeks out, I got a little hamstring pull at the competition at World's Strongest Man on the first event. I tore it a little bit. I picked the frame up a third time, took a couple steps, and I just felt on that last little step, snap. And on that same event, I tore a chunk of tendon in my ring finger on my left hand. Right when I picked the barrels up, I felt the snap. I was like,
Where's that feel? Is that in your wrist or in your forearm or in your actual finger? You feel
it's called a pulley tendon. So you feel it right there at the knuckle.
Shit.
And it's just a loud snap, and it's one of those aggravating injuries because it's not super painful, but it is. It's a structural thing. It decreases your ability to hold on to something.
So it's hard for you to make a fist right now, yeah?
Now I'm okay.
Okay.
But, that was the first event. So it's a barrel load, and then we have to do a frame carry. And then I'm trying to carry the frame, and my grip just keeps opening up.
His fist, by the way, is like the size of a toaster.
I noticed that once I shook his hand, I was like, I don't want to look at that hand. And then I saw it, I was like, fuck, it's huge.
Don't hit anybody with that thing, okay?
That's like one of the necessary things for strongman. You know, everything's grip event. So
yeah, you need some big old paws. How did this whole thing start for you? How did because strongman is out of all the different lifts and all the different things you can do, I think strongman ends up being one of the least favorite, just because maybe people aren't exposed to it as much. How did you find strongman?
You know, it's one of those things that kind of found me. But like you say, it's one of the sports that people are like, you know, I'm going to do almost anything else because it's a lot easier.
It's too hard.
It's fucking hard. But you know, I'll tell you how I got into strongman. I kind of want to give a little bit of background. You know, I got a fun story. It wasn't really fun for me in the moment, but I think a lot of people can benefit from it. So I'll just kind of go through it. You know, I started off as a kid getting picked on, basically. You know, I moved from, I lived in Northern Nevada, Southern California, moved to South Georgia when I was in 6th grade. So I was a fat kid from California, and the white kids hated me because I was from California. The black kids hated me because I was white. I'd never been exposed to any kind of racism. That sucked. You know, it was a shitty situation. I got picked on all the time. I'd come home with gum in my hair, you know, and crying to my mom and just hating it.
Maybe also not realizing that I would imagine you're already pretty much bigger than a lot of the kids.
You know, I was always a slow and steady kind of growth. I never had a growth spurt where I was bigger than anybody else. I was never the strongest, even after years of lifting. Middle school, high school, was never the strongest. I just kept working, you know. So in 6th grade, I'd been bullied so bad that I could feel what I know now to be rage building up. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I needed to do something. I had this pent-up energy. So I decided I was going to get a weight bench. I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I wanted to be a superhero. So I saved up money, mowing lawns, and, you know, $10 here, $10 there. I saved up $55 and went to Walmart and bought a Vitamaster 1700, one of those little benches. But it was, you know, my pride and joy. I loved it. I guess my mom was proud of me, so she bought the weights to go with it.
Nice.
But what neither of us knew was it didn't come with a barbell. So one afternoon, I snuck in the kitchen. I took the broom out of the kitchen, sawed the end off, and made that my barbell. And my mom came asking for it later on. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. What? That was met with a wooden spoon. But that was, you know, it was just how passionate I was about it. You know, that I was willing to go in and steal my mom's broom to make the whole thing happen. I started working out. Didn't have any idea what I was doing. You know, I tried to work out every day. And my dad gave me my first piece of lifting advice. Says, well, son, you know, you got to let yourself heal between workouts. That was simple. You know, you don't think about that at 11 years old. But from there, you know, I collected pieces of equipment. I built up my little gym. It was in a little fish cleaning room on the side of the garage. It was a little screened-in porch. And I made that my gym. And
what's a fish cleaning room? I don't think all households come with that.
a fish and game room. The guy that my parents had bought the house from was an avid hunter. So it was just a screened-in porch with a big sink and a big counter.
Got it.
You know, not particularly clean.
Right.
Had some remnants of whatever the hell he brought in there. But, you know, that was my sanctuary, man. I loved it. I was out there every day after school. And that continued. You know, well, the bullying continued as well, but lifting continued through middle school, high school. I remember moving from South Georgia to north of Atlanta halfway through my 8th grade year. And the first day there, I'm at school. This kid comes over. He pushes me against one of the trailers outside and says, man, you're looking at Will's girl. You better watch out. I'm like, who the hell is Will? Who is this girl? I just got here. What the hell is this? So, yeah, it was just more of the same. And it was, I was picked on at the last school. I thought maybe it'd be different here. No, same shit. And I was still, weaker. Not necessarily a weak kid, but definitely not the strongest. I remember kids talking about benching 205. That was a big deal. And I'm sitting at like 130, 135. So wow. Get through high school and then, I'd go to school and then I'd just sit there and think about coming home, working out after school. That was it. Never broke a book open, never did any of my projects, nothing for school. All I do, come home, hit my garage. I think I should thank my parents because they let me build a little weight room out of half of the garage. So that was really, really cool of them. And funny quick story about that. My dad sold the truck that he had to park in the driveway. That's why I got half of the garage. So he sold that. They bought a new car and decided they were going to move the weights out of the way, park both of the cars in there. Well, this is so bad to admit, but I threw a tantrum. I went out and I kicked the minivan, which was a Pontiac Transport. Those things are indestructible. I remember the ad on TV, a kid hits it with a baseball bat and it bounces off. So I kicked this thing and it knocked me across the garage. It didn't even dent, didn't even phase it. So I went over to the Toyota Camry that they just bought and I kick it a little harder than I did the van. And it just
That'll leave a dent, yeah.
Yeah, the whole side dents in. I was like, oh shit, now I'm in trouble.
Dude, I remember these vans.
Oh yeah,
That's it, man.
You could roll that sucker, it'd be fine.
It was tough, man.
That's good.
So, I guess my parents decided they didn't want to deal with that. They gave me my space back, and they parked the van because it was kind of old at that point. They parked it in the garage. But that was the only victory I ever got growing up. It was kind of a big deal to me. But I got my space, so I'd work out. I'd come home. I had my punching bag set up. I had my weights set out. Everything was perfectly placed, pristine. But that just carried on. I wanted to do bodybuilding at that point. Arnold Schwarzenegger was my hero. I wanted to look like the Punisher or Wolverine or one of those guys. That's what we grew up with. They have this. A lot of people have this problem with Barbie and the girls having that as their idol. Well, look at what the boys grew up with, He-Man and Punisher, Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to be one of those guys. So I did bodybuilding, and I signed up for a couple bodybuilding shows in high school. Now, these were fundraisers for the football team. I wasn't on the football team.
What year was this, by the way? Freshman year?
Oh, so this was junior year, 1998.
Okay.
That's 98 for those paying attention. That's how far back we go.
I'm joking.
I'm ancient in the sport. You're absolutely right. But so 98, I did my first bodybuilding show. 99, I did my second, and I never podiumed at either of them. I was the only one on the stage that knew what a lat spread was. I was the only one who knew all the poses. I got first call outs. I was the only one that had any idea what was going on. I didn't place. I'm like, this is bullshit. So I realized the subjective nature of bodybuilding.
Yep.
And I thought, I guess this isn't for me. Let's find something else. Well, halfway through my senior year, my parents had moved to Houston. I stayed in Atlanta and finished my senior year with a friend and his family. The day I graduated, my mom packed me in the car. We started driving home. So no after school, no graduation party for me. But Houston provided some opportunity. I started going to, gyms rather than working out in the garage. So I'd meet other people interested. And I ran into a guy named Marshall White. Now, you might remember that name from, the early 2000s. 2009, Marshall White actually made it to World's Strongest Man. Okay. So we were both there. But we started working out in the gym together. It was me, him, and my father. And, Marshall was all into powerlifting. Talked me into doing a powerlifting show with him.
Nice.
It seemed like it would be an awesome idea, but we paid all this money to go. stayed in a hotel and signed up and bombed out on squats. Oh, I had no idea what we were doing, man. We paid for all this equipment. We got a squat suit. We had one squat suit and one bench shirt that we were sharing. And I was the lighter group, so I got to at least wear them first. And why that's important is because we didn't realize that you couldn't wear boxers. So we had to go commando.
Underneath the underneath the squat suit, that'd be some serious chafing going on. Yeah.
Well, thankfully it was just a Z suit. It was one of those pretty stretchy ones. But yeah, so anyway, powerlifting was kind of out, bodybuilding was kind of out, and at this time I was working full time at Papacito's restaurant, waiting tables. I was going to school full time, and at this point I was doing really well in school. I'd actually kind of hit my stride. College was better. I had academic awards and honors credits. Teachers liked me for some reason. I don't know. So I remember thinking, maybe I'll just put weightlifting on the back burner, focus on school, make some money, get out of college, and I'll just, instead of building my entire schedule around weight training, because, I wouldn't work on Saturdays because Saturday was squat day. Yeah. That's just how it was. So I started thinking maybe I'll just fit my training in wherever I can. And it's like the universe came together and was like, okay, I'm going to throw something new at you. Now, this is 2002 when I was thinking this. And Marshall came to me one day. He says, I'm going to try a strongman contest. This is Texas Strongest Man. And I remember looking at him and I'm thinking, what? Like those guys on TV? What are you talking about? Are you crazy? We'll never be that strong. Nevertheless, he signed up and I was his training partner, so I was going to go with him and help him out. And I remember the whole way there, he kept saying, I don't want to finish last. I don't care what happens. I just don't want to finish last. And I'm like, you got to get that out of your mind, man. You'll be all right. So we get to Denison, Texas. It's 6 hours straight north of Houston, more or less. It's on the Oklahoma border. Now, it's August 2nd. It's hotter than hell. But the promoter, while Marshall's getting signed in, the promoter looks over at me and he says, hey, man, you're here. Why don't you sign up? And now looking back, I realized he just wanted my $50. But I thought, I'm here. Let's give it a shot. What the hell? And that's when Marshall looked up at me. He finished signing in. He looks over. He goes, man, I'm glad you signed up because at least now I know I won't take last.
That's fucked up. That's fucked up.
I didn't know I had a competitive bone in my body until that moment. I was like, you're going to die. So the next day we start competing, and it was the most fun I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, it changed me to my core. I remember every night for the next 6 months dreaming about that first contest. I'd wake up, I'd feel the farmer's handles in my hands, or I'd feel the stones, or I could smell the tacky. I mean, I knew once I did that contest, this is where I was going. I said, World's Strongest Man is mine. That's it. And instead of putting weightlifting on the back burner, all of a sudden I quit my job. School was starting to suffer. My focus had changed. But that was, 2002 was August. 2 years later, I won amateur America's Strongest Man, got my pro card, and started competing, traveling around the world. Went to World's Strongest Man. In 2005, it wasn't World's Strongest Man. It was IFSA and World's Strongest Man had split. So there was 2 world championships. I went with IFSA because that's where all the top athletes were at the time. So 05, 6, and 7, I competed there. And then in 2009, Marshall made it to World's Strongest Man. So we competed again together. And that's kind of the origin story of how I got into strongman.
Damn. That's incredible. A lot of things transpired, and were you pretty naturally good at it, you feel, right off the bat? I mean, it sounds like you have a lifting background already at this point because you've been messing around with some bodybuilding and some powerlifting, so that was probably really helpful. Yeah. You feel like you kind of gravitated towards it, as soon as even before you did the competition, just in training, did it start to feel right to you and click pretty good, or were you getting your ass kicked by it?
So the only training we did going into that first show was tire flip. because Marshall had found one at a construction
Yeah,
site.
nobody had shit back then.
Nobody had anything, gyms especially. It seemed to work better for me because I had more of an athletic build. I was 227 pounds in my first strongman contest. 6'3" or 4". Like I said, I grew slow and steady. I was like 23 when I stopped growing. So I think I was about 6'3" at that point. But yeah, I had more athleticism, some strength, and it definitely suited me more than powerlifting. I was always really good at deadlifts, but when it came to bench and squat, not so much. But yeah, I think what I liked most was just the brutal simplicity. You're lifting a rock, you know what I mean? Or you're flipping some heavy piece of equipment that you can almost imagine that 5 or 10,000 years ago, two guys betting each other or daring each other. I bet you I could lift that rock over there. I bet you I could flip this tree over, whatever, And so that appealed to me.
Did it help build a lot of confidence to the point where you maybe found yourself standing up for yourself a little bit more in day-to-day life rather than being like bullied or, just biting your tongue a lot? Did you find that you were able to voice your opinion more and stand up for yourself a little bit more once you got good at something?
I think I'd already learned that. As high school progressed, I got bigger and stronger, and at least people weren't messing with me by my my junior and senior year. But I think waiting tables probably taught me to speak up for myself, because if you don't speak up for yourself, you get run over, and the other guys take advantage of you. And I think it was about a year in, I realized I hate this job and I hate these people, and just shitty tables. You just got to speak up, but you got to find a way to do it that's within the confines of work environment. So I think that was probably what taught me the most, as far as that went.
And while after you got your pro card for Strongman, what were you doing while you were working and competing in pro Strongman events? Were you making good money being an athlete, or did you have to do something else too?
I competed enough and did well enough that it became my full-time job.
Nice. Yeah,
waiting tables was my last real job.
Okay.
And that was 2002. Was when I quit. Yeah. Okay. I mean, after that, I did do some window washing, but it was self-employed, so I just making side money. And then it was just competing and then training, teaching other people to do what I do.
Was it easier then to get sponsorship or harder?
Oh, no, I'm terrible about approaching people for sponsorship. I can't sell myself. Some people are great at selling themselves, and I mean, it's pretty obvious nowadays who's really good at selling themselves. That's something I've always struggled with. With the advent of social media, it makes it a lot easier for me.
Because being a pro strongman, you don't get paid much. You do get paid if you win and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But the sponsorship money is where you'd get most, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, for me, I do coaching as well.
Oh, there you go.
So I make a living off coaching, some off sponsorships, and then some off prize money. But, back in 2005, 2006, I was competing 16 to 18 times a year, and I was on the podium almost every time, 90% of the time. So, and that stayed true until about 2011, I think. And I think at that point, I was starting to get burned out, just competing, getting broken too many times. I don't know if you've seen the finals of World's Strongest Man 2010, just to play off the injury part of this. I broke my ankle halfway through the final and finished. I was in first place at the time. We had 3 more events the next day and held on for 5th. But, it was some of the most pain I'd ever been in to that point.
You broke it on a press, right?
Yeah, log press. Yeah.
And then you kept competing through that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the 3rd event the first day. That was the last event the first day. And just got my foot caught in a gap. When the log came back down, I couldn't get it under me correctly, and it just snapped. It actually tore the peroneus muscle off the side of my foot, and it took a chunk of the bone with it. Damn. So it's like, I think they call it an avulsion fracture. Yeah, that one sucked. The first event the next day was an 800-pound frame carry. So I still beat Derek Poundstone on that event.
There you go. A lot of the weights you guys use are just ridiculous. How does somebody get big? We talk a lot on this show about, getting leaner, and we'll seldom talk about we'll talk quite a bit about getting stronger. We talk a little bit about, getting muscle and holding on to muscle, but how does somebody get big? Like, I'm sure there's some people listening. I know we have some powerlifting fans and some strongman fans. They want to because you look really athletic. You look great. Like, you don't look like, sometimes
I appreciate
some
that.
people build themselves up to be like big and fat. Like I was in the end rounds, like in the prime of my powerlifting career. But how does somebody build himself up to be big? You said you were kind of a chubby kid. What are some of the things you've been doing over the years to kind of ensure that?
There's so many things. Early on, I wanted to get big, so I'd eat peanut butter and bread sandwiches, sit there and watch World's Strongest Man reruns and just go through half a loaf. The calorie
sounds like a party.
Yeah.
Why no jelly?
I think it was
peanut butter with no jelly.
It took too much time. I just wanted to hit the calories, just peanut butter and bread and I think whole milk. Then it graduated to
this picture. You're sitting there, it's all dry and you gotta keep shoving down more and more milk.
Milk is good.
Yeah.
The milk and the peanut.
It forces you to drink more milk.
Jesus,
who's that handsome devil?
So that picture was taken.
Your shoulders
4 years ago, I think.
Shoulders look angry.
It was a little leaner there than I am now. I think it was just good lighting. But yeah, this is actually when I was working with Jon Andersen on diet. And he's a mentor of mine, really good friend. I know he's been on this show a few times. But if you know anything about Jon, carbs are not on the menu.
Yeah, right.
And so that's how that was. Lots of fats, lots of veggies, and of course lots of protein. But my favorite cheat meal is a frozen pizza, like a bruschetta, with a steak cut up on top, and then you finish that with a pint of Haagen-Dazs. So you're talking 4,000 calories. If you want to get big, you got to eat big.
That is part of
that sounds really good.
That's actually not too far off from Jon Andersen's protocol that he was doing forever, where he had a pound of bacon, I think, every night, and then a pint of ice cream.
Yeah.
And he's trying to it was funny because he's telling me about it, but he's trying to sell it to me as if it's some sort of scientific thing. He's all the fat from the bacon, it slows down the sugar from the ice cream. He's works pretty good. I'm okay. And he's all sweating and veins are popping out everywhere. I'm all right, Jon, looks like it's working great for you.
He's a character, man. We spent a lot of time together on the road.
He's the most ridiculous person I think I ever met in my life.
I remember listening to some of your shows, and you always have a poop story at the end.
Always.
I've got one with Jon that I might as well just share while we're on the topic.
All right.
We were in, I believe it was Tulsa, Oklahoma or something. And we're rooming together at this contest. And for whatever reason, Jon didn't want the maid coming in. So we were there for 3 or 4 days. And, the Ray-Bans, back when it was all Ray-Ban, the room just stunk. It got right.
Yeah, because of neoprene sleeves.
Sleeves and all that stuff, yeah. But after a couple days, we're running low on toilet paper, and I remember coming back to the room, and right as I walk in, I'm about to go take a shower, and Jon shouts from the bed, he goes, "Hey, buddy, don't use any of those towels under the sink.
Oh, Jesus.
We're out of toilet paper."
Oh, man.
It's fucking disgusting.
Jeez.
It's fucking disgusting.
That's what you get with Jon, though. And I don't know how he does it, but he pulls it off. You're not mad at him. It's he just has this way about him. It's that's fine.
He's just so open all the time. It just doesn't matter, I guess.
I think that's what it is. He just owns his disgusting nature.
What else do you do to get big? Peanut butter, milk. We know about PEDs and stuff. We talk about that shit all the time. We don't need to get into that one, but just eating a lot of food and kind of making a commitment, right? And
consistency. Yeah. You got a lot of guys who say, "Oh, but I eat all the time." And then you go through what they're actually eating and you're only have 3,000 calories, man. Mm-hmm. you need to bump those are rookie numbers. You need to bump those numbers up.
Yeah.
5,000, 6,000. And then depending, if you're over 300, 350 pounds, you're going to need 7,000 or 8,000. It's a full-time job just to eat for strongman.
I have a question though. Okay, so this is a question I have. As far as like strongmen like you are concerned that are on the main circuit, right? Yeah, you got to eat to get big, but there are some big people, and then there are guys like you, because you said that it took you a while, right? But then shaking your hand, there's something different about you. There's something different about all Shaw, Thor, Eddie, handshakes. Like you can tell that frame is different. Like Mark, you were big, and you are big, and your hand. But sizable. But if you put your fist next to his, can we just do that on camera real quick? You see that there's not like this shit ain't normal, right? So I'm just curious, on that circuit, are all the guys like also just gargantuan individuals, everything wise?
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: World's Strongest Man this year or last year, we had a group picture. Front row and a back row. For the first time in my life, I was one of the short guys that had to sit down in front. I'm 6'4". Just that's the size of these monsters. I was one of the little guys. That doesn't happen very often.
And but it's not a huge disadvantage because sometimes we see the guys that aren't as tall do well, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have Alexei Novikov who won 2020s, 300 pounds, 6'2", maybe. He's just an athlete, a hell of an athlete, and he's got really smart training, and he knows how to make or get the most out of his body.
There's two main things that are super fascinating about this sport. I guess maybe three main things. The amount of weight you guys use is just like, it's so extreme, it's ridiculous.
It's kind of stupid sometimes.
Sometimes like a yoke walk is like, what, 1,400 pounds, 1,600 pounds, right? Like, that just, I can't even figure that one out because we have a yoke in the gym and I put a plate on each side and that felt pretty good. I felt well accomplished moving that thing around. So you guys doing those weights, it's really fascinating. You got the extreme weights, you got the extreme like body types, like he's mentioning, like there's literal like giants in there.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is the work capacity of some of you guys. Like watching some of you dudes do like the stone loading stuff. And it's like 49 seconds that it took to load, this stone. I forget all the different weights, but it's like remarkable. You're like, what the, how could someone that big move that fast? You're like, what the fuck? Or it breathe and recover afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I think personally, one of the worst events is a really, really grueling truck pull. Or maybe even that Conan's wheel that they've got, because you're doing a solid 60 to 75 seconds, all out intensity.
That's like my favorite scene. He did not care anymore. And he's like walking with the Conan wheel thing.
Exactly. And I mean, you kind of have to adopt that mentality to be
Remember
able to
that?
do
You
it.
guys ever see that from Conan the Barbarian?
It's been a long time, but
Oh, it's amazing. It's a shot of like a young boy and he's walking around with this Conan wheel, as they call it now, from the movie. And I think it's for water or something, like it's water well or something.
Or they're grinding something up. I'm not exactly sure.
And he keeps walking around in this circle, and eventually the boy turns into Arnold, and he's all big and jacked. The Conan wheel.
Well, I also want to know this then, because you would think looking at strongman that obviously you want to be as big and as strong as possible, but when you look at CrossFit and there seems to be like a body type that wins all the CrossFit games, 5'8", 180 pounds, that's who's going to win. You're not going to see a 6'3" guy win CrossFit. But in strongman, you said last World's Strongest Man, 6'2", 300, that guy won.
Yeah.
How is that happens?
I mean, you bring up a good point because you had guys like Thor, 6'9", 440. Shaw is 6'8",
6'9", weight, 440.
And then you've got, the guys like me and Novikov who are low threes. And, I think it just comes down to just neural capacity. How many muscle fibers can your brain turn on at one time? And then how long can you sustain that? I think a lot of it comes from brain power. And, the guys who are really athletic, who have either worked at it their whole lives or were born with it. For me, I worked at it my whole life. So I had this ability to tap into resources that I think a lot of other guys didn't have the ability to do. Part of what makes that possible is the rage that I had. I just tap in, like think about getting gum in my hair. I'm like, kill this son of a bitch. And whatever's in front of me became that son of a bitch, you know? So, I mean, when it came to a contest, I'd probably get 20% more out of my body than I did in training. Used to always drive guys, Kevin Nee, he would get so mad at me. He's like 70-pound deadlift PR in competition. He'd just sit there and kind of walk around like, who does that? You know, so, but that's how I worked. I think guys like Novikov and a lot of the other ones, they can do that same thing. They get a lot out of their body on game day.
Like competition magic, we used to call it.
Yeah,
there's like something
gamers.
to it. You know, I that was something for me that I had to work on a lot. I had to do a lot of singles. I had to train a very specific way to like learn to be explosive. Like I was okay explosively otherwise, but I really, for me, it felt like I had to really ingrain it. I think, you know, we all like to think that we like work harder than the next guy and that our circumstances are so different, but just being like brutally honest, like I definitely had a natural propensity to be pretty strong because I was strong. As soon as I lifted weights, I was stronger than my friends. So that was pretty clear. But what you're talking about, that kind of neural drive type of thing, like the thing that like Jeremy Avila or some of these guys have, they just like, they could talk to us and say, yeah, man, I'm messed up. I tore my hamstring 2 weeks ago. And then 3 weeks later, they're pulling 700 again for a couple reps. And I don't feel that I've ever, and maybe I'm just missing it or something, not paying attention to what I've been able to do or something. I don't think I've ever had, like, whatever that thing is. I don't think I've ever been able to channel it in.
Survival mode.
Man, quite the way some of these guys can. It's really, really incredible.
I think some of it comes back to evolution. You know, if you think about a group, a tribe, you had different members that were good at different things. You had the workhorses who could just take the punishment and keep doing whatever it was. And
I would be able to handle that. I could do that.
Yeah. And then you had the guys who, you know, in the critical moment of a hunt would come through because they somehow drew upon this magic power to be 20% better than they ever were. And it just, the whole group worked. So I think you got that's still going today.
Right.
Society has evolved a lot in the last 10,000 years, but our bodies haven't. They're pretty much the same, same machinery, same hardware.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it just falls back to that mostly.
Was there anything in your training that you felt was like unique or different or something you picked up along the way to help you channel some of that? Because we've seen a lot of guys, they are crushing weights. I mean, used to call them in football practice All-Americans. The players that like, it's like, look, asshole, we know that you know the plays because we're on the same fucking team. So the linebacker lines up right in the hole or the safety gets an interception. Like, you know all of our plays. We get it. You don't need to do that. And then the game comes and they fucking suck and they get their ass kicked. Was there anything in your training that you felt that kind of prepped you for that? Were you like running the events through your head when you were training or anything of that nature?
I think it's a variety of factors, and that's a great question, to be honest. If you can harness the answer to that question, that's magic. But I think it's multifaceted in that, yes, there were things in my training that really helped. First and foremost, I was training with 3 other World's Strongest Man competitors and 2 who were alternates. We had a savage training group. And on top of that, we had my father, who was just this mouth that talks so much shit. And he was, in his early to mid 60s and doing these incredible weights for his age and his size.
And you got him into strongman, not the other way around, right?
I did, yeah. I'd always had a passion for lifting. And when I was about 18, I think I got him to go to the gym with me.
Wow.
And then 2 years after that was when I got into strongman. And I'm like, yo, Pops, we got to do this. And he thought the same way I did. He's like, what, are you crazy? And then he goes on to win 6 national championships and 1 world title, which he loves to hold over my head all the time. How many national championships you got?
It still ain't over for you, though. You're still in the hunt.
That's why I'm still going.
You got to tell him, hey, asshole, I'm still in this.
Yeah, so, I had a great training group. The conditions were pretty savage. We were in Houston. We were outside next to a metal storage unit. It used to be next to a lot full of trees, And then a year after we started training there, they shred every damn tree over there and built a steakhouse, which I kind of thought was funny because here we are on the weekends training. And, you know, after an event, we kind of roll over to the ditch and start throwing up. And you got people over there trying to eat, watching this. That's
Imagine the person at like, you know, like some of these big time restaurants that like survey the area. Like, let's put a steakhouse right there. I see all these huge people over there.
Yeah, exactly. Thought it was, you know, quality plan, but
not with you guys throwing up all the time. Explain to us the shed, because that is like, it seemed like every strongman a couple years back, they didn't have a home. You know, you guys were vagabonds, like living wherever you could and having your shit set up wherever you could. It's like an ordeal to try to get strongman equipment out of a storage shed. You could totally fuck yourself up and totally get hurt.
Yeah, it was like Tetris every time. We had a 10 by 20 foot storage shed. I had all my stones, platforms, you know, Conan's wheel, tires, everything in there. And it took a minimum of 2 guys to get everything out. And by the time you got everything out, you were warmed up.
What, an hour?
Yeah, a good 20 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, 2 guys, maybe a little bit more, depending on which equipment we wanted to get to. If we wanted to do stones, we have to get everything out so that we could free up the area. But one of the good things about that, and probably one of the reasons I was really good at stones, is you had to put the stones away. You had to load them. Otherwise, we couldn't get all the equipment in.
Yeah.
So no one was going home until that last stone was in. Like, literally.
That's fucked. Everyone's all banged up after training.
Exactly. And, you know, a 400-pound rock is always a 400-pound rock. You can't break it down.
God damn.
Some untraditional ways of like having equipment too. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, I know some people would like literally throw weights inside the stones so that your training would be weird. Like, I've heard of people throwing 25-pound plates inside of these cement stones that you got, so that like one side's got 25 extra pounds on it and you're trying to pick it up. And I don't know if you guys mess with that, but I know some people did.
Well, we had a stone. It was a 250-pound stone that Josh Thigpen made, and he had a 25 in there. I don't think it was intentional to make it off balance. I think it's just how it settled as the
so
concrete
dangerous.
was curing.
You think you got it. You go to pick it up and
No
it just
way.
goes all
rolls all
you're
to
like,
one
oh
side.
my God, my back.
But you know how back then, and this is like 2003 was when we got the storage unit. We trained there for 10 years, but to get that equipment, I had to drive all over the place. Like, my stones came from that contest, the first contest that I did. The promoter's grandfather is the one who made the stones. So I had to drive 6 hours one way and then drive back with 1,200 pounds of rock in the back of my truck. You know, it was a tough trip, but you had to be committed, and I was committed, so that wasn't a bad trip. But that's how we got our equipment. You know, then you try to find a place to put it, and no gym wants you around. Most storage units were saying, hell no.
Yeah.
Find someone that can weld shit, right?
And then, yes, that's the next thing is you pray that one of the guys who says, hey, you know, I'd like to come train with you is a welder by trade, because then you're like, yeah, come on in, please. Be friends, stay. We need this and this and this made.
You know, it's really crazy. Like, with powerlifting, finding a good gym for powerlifting, like let's say a gym that has a lot of powerlifters, that's somewhat of a difficulty, but you'll find something, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a gym that has platforms, you know, squat racks, all that shit. But strongman seems to be like, you have to actually really like that sport, because it seems like it's going to be a headache to find people to train with. And if you train, you're probably not training by yourself. You have to find a group that trains at the same time and a schedule. It seems like work.
It's tough. It's getting a lot easier nowadays.
Yeah.
There are a lot of gyms that at least have a yoke and some farmers and maybe a log. But you're still, if you're wanting to get the most out of it, it's best to train with a bunch of people, because you can't really tell how fast you're going, you know, with farmers or a yoke or whatever. You can video, but it's really hard to tell, and it's hard to get motivated to do that kind of work when you're by yourself. And Zydrunas, I got to hand it to him. Zydrunas Savickas from Lithuania. He trains by himself, and he's done so pretty much his whole career. I don't know how he does it.
Is he the greatest of all time?
I think so, yes. I think so.
Most strongmen, when you ask them that flat out, they'll say, yeah,
He's
no doubt.
He's done like 300, 350 contests. He's won over 250 of them.
What?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that. Eight world titles, right, at the Arnold, right?
8 at the Arnold, 4 World's Strongest Man, 2 with IFSA, and, countless other victories. Just like 12-time Lithuania's Strongest Man.
He was so big. He was so big in his prime, just massive.
How big was he? How big was he?
Well, he was bigger than everybody else in his prime until Shaw and Hapthor and Eddie Hall came.
He wasn't a giant. He wasn't a giant like everybody else. But when the competitions came around, he would just get so. He was like Eddie Hall in his prime, big.
Sit up, Andrew?
He was fucking massive.
Remember how to spell his name?
Zadruna.
Big Z.
Z-Y.
Big Z. You can try.
There we go.
He also did something I thought was really interesting. His whole career, at least the latter part of his career, I remember he would always lose weight after all his competitions, and I took a cue from that. That was important for me. I was like, man, there's no reason for me to walk around this unhealthy when I'm not competing. Yeah, look at that guy.
Yeah, you could tell when he was in shape. You could see it in his face.
Yeah, his face was real
His
wide.
face it would just have like muscles in his forehead that were pulsing. You could see it. And I think this one's his world record of 501 or 502 log.
I don't know if anyone's still done, no one's still done that, right? Or
one guy beat it 230 kilos.
Nice.
Iron BB a couple of months ago. But it took, I think that was like 2016
his
or 15.
stomach would get really, really big, but he was.
He'd use that to his advantage.
Yeah, it was like a lever, right?
Yeah, just a shelf. Put a log on top, make it clean, easy. But yeah, he's just so consistent for so long. And this is true with Brian Shaw. And I think, and I don't mean to say this in a way that seems negative, but it's like the more boring a guy's life is, the better he is for the longer.
That
longer
makes
time.
sense, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Less distractions.
I've told this before on this show, but like when I met John Cena, he was getting ready for a bodybuilding show. And I remember he like ate like one meal a day. I can't even remember what it was, like tuna or something, or chicken breast. And he had like 2 or 3 protein shakes every day. And I was just like, I mean, he and I were moving fitness equipment at the time. We had these like lowly jobs, you know? And I just remember thinking to myself, like, that guy's going to be able to turn himself into whatever the fuck he wants, because he did that for 6 weeks. This boring ass diet of protein shakes and chicken breast.
that's a fair point.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes that kind of discipline and, to be that consistent over that long of a time. Because Zydrunas has been consistent since 2002.
Mariusz Pudzianowski has won the most World's Strongest Man competitions, right?
For World's Strongest Man, yeah, he's got
Right.
5.
It's so interesting how, like, just the different body types, because Pudzianowski, he doesn't have a power belly. He
No,
looks lean as shit. Looks like a
jacked.
bodybuilder.
Yeah.
He was wild.
Marius is just naturally pretty lean. I met his father. His father has that same lean shape to him. He didn't have the musculature, but he's very lean. You could see his veins in his forearms. And I think it's easy for Marius to stay lean, but he's also, that dude's a machine too. Disciplined. He was really, really disciplined.
Who's the person that you trained with that's kind of the craziest, where they've done stuff where you're like, I ain't participating in that? Or you like that kind of party?
I am that kind of guy. I'm
You're like rolling your sleeves up. You're like, this is perfect. I love it. I know John's like that. Like John would do like wild shit, like tons and tons of reps and tons
He
of
would
sets.
do reps upon reps upon reps. I trained with him a couple times, and I remember just watching, I think it was a block clean and press. It's like 230, 240. And he's going to do a set of like 3 or 4. And he gets through 3, gets through 4, drops it, says again, does another one, again, does another one, again. He does like 14 or 15 reps with it. Damn. Just gets into a groove and just keeps going. He's gasping for air.
Lost himself
and
somewhere
just,
in there.
yeah. But that's that zone, you find that zone, that's killer right there. That's where you want to be. So he just milked it for everything it was worth.
You mentioned how, like, getting ready for 2021, how you were training on, like, the edge of injury before the contest, because, like, you were actually stronger than you were in the past, and you were towing that line. Do you think that that's necessary? Because, like, you obviously know training really, really well. You know how much you need in terms of recovery. You know where that edge is. But do you think that anything could have been done in a safer way? Do you think so, or?
Absolutely. So 2021 was a 10-year gap for World's Strongest Man's for me. I competed in 2011, and then I went through a whole slew of shit and worked my way back up to World's Strongest Man 2021. I tried to cram that 10 years into the 2 months that I had notice. 10 years into 2 months of training.
Any warm-up competitions?
And I'd competed. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd been competing since 2017.
Okay.
The end of 2017, it was a 5-year gap between competitions where I kind of fell into a black hole. And I competed several times. I went to the Champions League finals in 2018, won a few shows, you know, so I had some practice getting back into it. But, you know, when you get that call for World's Strongest Man, it's just kind of an overwhelming experience. You just 100% full speed ahead.
Yeah.
And I'd hit up Poundstone to help me with the training. And Poundstone had me doing what he did when he was in his prime. And I couldn't quite recover from that. So those are the whiskey barrels. That's when I snapped my finger on and then had to do this frame.
And right now, how's your hamstring? Is your hamstring already gone yet?
No. So I could feel that deep in, there was something still there from the strain. And I pick it up, I walk. After the second drop, I should have just left it. But you got your blood up, everybody's screaming at you. So I pick it up one more time, take a step, and then feel that little squishy tear deep in the muscle. It was there. That's where the left hand kind of gave way.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is just crazy dangerous. You said you were telling me earlier, and I think you just mentioned it now. You went through some really tough times. What kind of happened where you were gone from the sport for a while?
Yeah, so fun story. So 2010, we mentioned earlier that I broke my ankle. Halfway through the finals, World's Strongest Man. That injury kind of plagued me for like the next year and a half. Because my next contest after that was the Arnold. It's about 5.5 months later, but I went back to training way too soon. I was fighting through, excuse me. I was fighting through that injury, just holding me back, you know, considerably. Went ahead and pushed anyway, you know, and during that time, this is actually pre-World's Strongest Man, I had gone to a doctor. I had had an invitation from a friend of mine to go see a pain management specialist. And I say specialist, it's more like a doc in a box, you know, pain management clinic. And I went because I was going to get some painkillers and really just use them for traveling. And I remember on my way there, this little voice in the back of my head says, bad idea. And it's just so little, it's so subtle, it's so quiet. And I was like, that was weird. First time I've ever heard my intuition scream at me like that.
Can I ask what kind of painkillers we're talking about? Like how strong are they?
It started out 10 milligram Norco, hydrocodone, along with Soma, which increased the effectiveness. It was a muscle relaxer / I think it was originally an antipsychotic.
Have you ever taken anything like that before?
I took a Norco after a surgery once, and I was like, I'm not taking this shit again because it knocked me the fuck out.
Yeah,
So,
it gives me
yeah.
like nightmares and shit. Like I'm kind of fortunate that I've had some bad experiences with them. So luckily for myself, I never got too caught up in it.
That's very fortunate because right away I was like, oh, fuck, you know, I feel better. Not so sore. I can train a little harder and then relax at night. And, you know, after 2 or 3 weeks, I think I started, I wanted to put them away. I didn't want to take them. And I noticed that I didn't feel very good. If I didn't know what was going on. I was clueless.
It's wild. It doesn't take very long, 3 to 5 days.
Yeah. It caught me by surprise. And I just kept going. And the next month I went and got more. And the next month I got more. And at that point, your tolerance goes up. So you start taking more. You know, right before the contest at World's Strongest Man 2010, I was up to 8 Norco and 4 or 5 Soma at a time. Not a day, but at a time. You're only supposed to take like 3 or 4 a day. Shit. So, yeah, I had gone a little overboard. And what was really shitty but funny is after I broke my ankle, I'd already taken most of what I brought with me to South Africa. So I really didn't have many painkillers when I really needed them. And, and so there were so many injuries that year that the doctors had already given away most of the painkillers. So that was fun. But, I kind of fell into using them a lot more as a crutch to get through training because my ankle was killing me. And my body was pretty beat up at that point. I'd competed as a professional from 2005 all the way up till that point, and I was doing 15 to 18 shows a year, which is way more than any other American because it's a lot of travel because most of them were overseas. But anyway,
it's crazy. But 15 to 18 shows, that's crazy because that's a full-on competition, right?
Yeah.
Like that's more than you're doing sometimes 2 competitions, maybe 3 in certain months.
I had several times where I'd do 4 in a row. I actually looked at my training journal just last night, and I found the stint where I did a contest at the beginning of April. 3 weeks later, I did 5 in a row, 1 in America, 1 overseas, 1 in America, 1 overseas, then back in Connecticut. 3 weeks later, I did 1 in Norway. 3 weeks after that was Fortissimus, which is the hardest contest of all time. So that was like a 2.5 month stint of my competition schedule. So I'm not saying it's smart. I loved it. I love competing. I love traveling. So I just went for it, man, full bore. But it took its toll. And, I competed at the Arnold 2011. I still had a brace that I would put on my ankle. I took 4th, but I could tell it took its toll. Because I didn't want to go to the gym after that. I didn't want to train. I started to really resent training. I competed and I still trained all of 2011, even part of 2012. But 2012 was kind of when it broke. I was on painkillers now for several years.
Yeah.
I'd imagine like your sleep and your eating and like all that's getting thrown off too at that point.
Yeah, you'd sleep because that's kind of what they make you do, but I didn't eat much. So I got real lean. I lost a lot of body weight. But the real toll that came was I was married at the time, and I had a little son. He was born in 2009. And what painkillers, they don't only numb your physical pain. They don't numb you physically. They also numb you emotionally. So that's going to cause a divide. That's going to cause a big rift in any relationship. So my wife and I, we started to have some trouble. Towards the end of 2012, she moved out, and we were going to work things out by moving to England, which is where she was from. I actually met her at the Arnold in 2006. So we'd gotten married. She moved over to America. We had a kid. She wanted to move back to England. I can't blame her because, things weren't great at home. So the plan was she was going to move over to England. I was going to sell the house and move over and join them. And then the worst day of my life, the most painful experience I've ever had, out of all the things that I've broken, out of all the injuries I've had, nothing comes close to November 25th, 2012. That was the day that I took my wife and my 3-year-old son to the airport under the false pretense that I was going to sell the house and join them. That little voice that I was talking about earlier started screaming. It didn't just whisper, it was screaming, "This is a mistake. This is a mistake. Don't do it. This is a mistake." But, my higher thinking was like, whatever, we're going to make this work, and tried to rationalize it. Took them to the airport at 10 a.m. And the moment that got me was when I watched my son, with his little baseball hat and his car's backpack, taking his tiny little suitcase, big smile on his face because he was going on an adventure, takes my wife's hand, and they walk through the doors at the airport. And I knew that was the last time that I was going to have any kind of relationship. with them. And yeah, that opened up a scar on my heart. It was so painful that I couldn't make it all the way home without having to pull over and gather myself. But at that point, this is when, bad got to worse. I was hurting so bad at that point that I just said, I need to get out of this pain. I got to find something. And that's when I got a hold of an old friend and ended up getting some crystal meth to kind of check out for the week. Now I had.
You ever done that before?
I had come across it a couple times. It was a party drug. It was just, I could see it would probably be a problem if I were to take it on a regular basis, because it's one of those things, you just get into feeling good and get into a zone. And I knew better. I knew this was going to be a bad idea, but I was looking for anything. And I gave myself a week. I said, Travis, you can do whatever the hell you want. Just take the week, clean yourself up. We're gonna try and get off the painkillers again, because that was something I had tried several times over the years, and withdrawals from painkillers sucks. It really sucks, especially when your whole body really hurts from training. So I took that week, and that week turned into 4 years. It just never stopped. And I ended up, I lost my wife and son, because she went to England and had no intention of me coming. And taking the crystal meth all the time, you lose sight of what's important in life. And so I stopped training. I couldn't stand training anymore. I'd already kind of resented it a little from the injury, but that just amplified the whole thing. So there I was. I didn't have my family. I wasn't training. My friends started to disappear. So I'd lost my passion in life. Training, I'd started at 6th grade. I was 11 years old. It was what I'd always loved. And now I had this huge gaping hole, so the easiest thing to fill that hole with is drugs. That's something bad. And so, they flooded in, and that became my life. Shortly thereafter, my parents and my sister, they kind of turned their backs on me. All the rest of my friends, family, everybody. So I'd lost my wife and son. I'd lost my passion. I'd lost my job as a personal trainer. I lost my family. And then I was losing my house, because I got to the point where they were foreclosing on me. And I remember having just a few months to kind of get my shit together and get my stuff out of there. And that got me to one of the lowest points. I think it was the lowest point, actually. It was, everything had fallen apart. And I remember the day clearly, because I tried to talk to my son at least 5 times a week on the phone. And now, like a little kid, 4 and 5 years old, he doesn't want to talk on the phone. So I did my best to talk with him and make it interesting. And I understood when they didn't answer or when he didn't stay on the phone long. But this was another one of those times when they didn't answer, and it'd been a couple days in a row, and it got me. It shattered me. And so I'm sitting there in my bathroom, and I'm just going through all the pain and the loss that I've had in my life. And I'm going through this checklist. I've lost my family, lost my friends, lost my house, lost this. And I realized, that's kind of a regular thing. And it got the better of me. I had a gun in my hand. I had the gun in my mouth for a minute. And what stopped me was thinking about the poor bastard who'd have to clean up my mess. And I remember thinking, who thinks of that at this moment? Who thinks of that? So I laugh at myself a little, just this kind of sobbing laugh, like totally broken man. And I put the gun down, and I'm like, Travis, you get a hold of yourself, man. This is bullshit. You're going to have to find something good in your life. Like, I noticed the tendency or the correlation between going through my checklist of all the bad things that had happened to me And I noticed that every time I did that, the more I focused on it, the more it seemed that my life would kind of create more of that negativity. And so, you take this spiral, you start spiraling downward in negativity. And I thought while I'm sitting there on the side of my bathtub, I'm like, maybe if we just find something good to focus on, that could turn this around. Maybe. I think it was that little intuition, just spark, gave me the idea. And I listened to it. So I started looking around, and I'm looking at my house. I'm like, let's find something good. Let's find something positive. And I caught myself, that tendency of saying, well, I've lost this, I lost that, I lost this. And I went, shit, stop that, Travis. Find one fucking thing good. And it was so hard because everything, if you look at a tweaker's house, it's a shithole. I had crap everywhere. And the bathtub that I was sitting on was missing the panel on the side because I had sold that to somebody. Oh, God, the shit that I did, man. But anyway, I finally kind of just put my head in my hands and I'm looking down. I'm like, I got to find something. And so I just look, I see my feet on the ground. It's like nothing, just there's my feet. And then I move them around a little bit and I went, hey, you know what? I still got my own 2 feet. And if I've got my own 2 feet, I don't have to be here. I could stand up and I can get the fuck out of here. I can go do whatever the hell I want. And all of a sudden, I got this surge of joy from the pit of my stomach just kind of work its way up the back of my throat. And I felt good for the first time in years. It's like, wow, I want that feeling again. So I kind of, sat with that as long as I could. I remember falling asleep and getting up the next day and saying, I want that feeling. So I looked for another good thing. And right away, I started spiraling down. I was like, well, I lost this, I lost that, I lost this. And I went, wait a second, stop. You got your feet. Let's find something else. So I looked around, I said, well, let's just go with this. I got my hands. I got my own 2 feet and I got my own 2 hands. And with these feet and these hands, I can go anywhere and I can do anything because my hands are strong. They still got their strength. I can do whatever I need to do. And that feeling came back up. And I was like, that's the ticket right there. Something simple. Don't look for something big. Find something simple to be grateful for. So on the 3rd day, I found a 3rd thing. On the 4th day, I found a 4th thing. On the 5th day, I didn't find a new thing. So I went through my previous 4. And now my list is no longer I've lost. It's I have, and I'm grateful. So that spiral started to work its way upward. And I started to reverse that momentum. Now, that was a slow and difficult process. You got to be diligent with it. But every day I would go through my gratitude list and I would try and I would feel for that little surge of joy. I got to the point where I would keep something in my pocket, like a little rock or a coin or whatever, so that every time I reached in my pocket, to get my phone or whatever, if I felt that rock, I'd pull it out, I'd look at it, and I'd go over my gratitude list real quick and then I'd put it back in my pocket. So several times a day, I'm going through being grateful. And when I realized that I was really doing something that was making waves was when one of the other tweakers, the people around me, because, misery loves company. So if you're elevating yourself, these people want to keep you down. And I remember her saying, what do you have to be so grateful for? And I was like, oh, there's another one for my list because I'm making waves. This is powerful because it's upsetting the balance around me. Mm-hmm. And that gave me so much more momentum right there. I was like, I'm on a roll. I'm going to keep going. And, by the time I'd lost my house, that they'd actually come and kicked me out, I was already on my way out of the bottom. A lot of people say, when you got kicked out of your house, was that your rock bottom? I was like, no, that was my ticket to freedom because I knew it was coming. So I went ahead and I said, this is my prison. So I wasn't able to get myself out of there. I wasn't able to. So I knew that being kicked out was going to be my way of being forced to act and do something. So I just went ahead and said, this is where all my pain, this is where all the sadness, it's going to stay here. So they kicked me out and I ended up living in that storage unit where we had trained for 10 years. I lived there for a few months. And I remember the first day I was there, I'm trying to get whatever stuff I had in my truck into the storage unit. Most of the equipment had been taken out at that point. I let a friend store it and use it. So I was just packing my stuff in there and rearranging, and I was working late into the night. And so I slept in my truck. And the next morning, the guy, it's owned by Linda and Steve, All Safe Storage. If anybody in Cypress, Texas sees All Safe Storage, they're good people. So Steve comes over and he says, "Now, Travis, you can't stay here. You know that, right?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, of course, Steve. I'm sorry, man. I wouldn't dream of it." So I just worked late again the next night, and I worked late the next night, and eventually they just looked the other way. And I made a little spot for myself in this storage unit. I can show you a picture if you want. But I carved out a little niche. I was sleeping on top of a little plyo box that was about 2.5 feet wide by 3 feet wide or long. And then I put a yoga mat on top of it.
Ultimate comfort.
So that was it there.
Oh, shit.
I slept on top of that box, and I put my feet up on the shelf behind it. And yeah, and then I've got another shot that day or shortly thereafter. I don't know if they could see this at home, but that's what I looked like right before I got kicked out of my house. So I was,
wow.
At that point.
What year was that?
That was 2015.
Is there any way you can show that to the camera, Andrew?
I don't.
Yeah, you can just send it to me
can
later.
email it.
Just email it the way you've been.
I can do that.
Yeah, and then
all right.
I'll throw it up on screen.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Wait a minute.
So I was 227 pounds in that photo.
Man, you look different there. Damn.
I'd gotten up to 341. At some point during this whole ordeal, I remember just kind of one of those bad days going, when is this going to end? When is this nightmare going to end? And that little voice in the back of my head says, "You're going to start over." And I knew right away what that meant. It said everything that I'd gained with Strongman was gone. I'm going to have to redo it. So that first contest, I was 227 pounds. When I walked back into the gym, January 15th, 2016, I was 227 pounds. To the pound. Started over. But after being in that storage unit for a few months, I'd gotten, when they evict you, they take your stuff and they basically ransom it back to you or they auction it off. So I'd gotten my stuff and I was packing into the storage unit and saving up money so that I could move to Reno. My parents had moved there a couple years before. I hadn't talked to them. I had gotten a call from my aunt saying that my mom had gotten sick. This would have been July of 2015. And I said, hey, I'm going through hell right now. I'm losing the house. Maybe you guys could send me some money and help me get out of here faster. And of course that was a no. And, can't blame them. But I needed to get out there because my mom had liver failure. And so I saved up money. That's part of the reason I stayed in the storage unit was to save money. I could have afforded a hotel room. But by this point, I'd already slept there for several weeks. I had a little routine going.
Yeah.
But saved up enough money. And I had one last thing I had to do before I could leave Houston. I was driving a 2003 Dodge Dakota. Had no paint on it. It sunburned the paint off of the roof and the hood. And sometime in like 2014, I think I tried to strip it down and repaint it. And typical tweaker fashion, I got it halfway through and did something else. So I drove around with this truck the engine was great and the bones were great, but the paint was just horrendous. I had 2 different colors of primer on it. But I just for pride's sake, I had to finish painting it. And I had a sprayer, I had the paint, I had everything I needed. And so I sprayed it. First coat was high gloss finish. And this is a truck that I did Strongman with, so it had some dents and dings. When you put high gloss on something like that, you see every freaking scratch and mark. So I did it again with a more of a flat black, and it came out pretty good. And I was proud enough that as soon as it dried, on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, 2015, I got on the road and I started driving to Reno. It took 10 days. I had burned all of my contacts, so I couldn't get any more meth. I had a small amount. I had to dole it out. I had to kind of wean myself off. You know, I drove when I wanted to drive. I slept when I wanted to sleep. I went where I wanted to go, and I couldn't stop. And that's one of the things when you try to quit meth, it is a depression unlike any other. You just feel like you can't do shit. And that's what gets people. That's, you know, it's the physical part. It doesn't hurt. You're just totally depressed. I didn't have a chance to be depressed. I had to keep going. So I didn't know it at the time, but that was probably the best way to kick that habit ever. And then I had a couple little magic moments on that trip. I remember on New Year's Eve, I drive into the Grand Canyon, and it's snowing everywhere, and my truck is magically staying on the road because I've never driven through snow in my life. I had like 700 pounds of shit in the back. Damn. You know, that just my stuff. And I think that's what saved me. That's what kept me on the road because it's a rear wheel drive. Mm-hmm. I pull off the road and I park. The next morning, and this is pitch black. I couldn't see anything. The next morning, I'm sitting there in front of my truck, taking a nap. Sun starts coming up, and I see right in front of me, it's coming up over the rim of the Grand Canyon on New Year's Day, 2016. I mean, you talk about like a rebirth, a new beginning. It was pretty incredible. And then, you know, I just sat and I enjoyed that for a while and visited some other parks and took 10 full days to get to Reno. It's a 2-day drive. But when I got there, I didn't have any more meth with me. I couldn't re-up because I didn't know anybody. I certainly wasn't going to find anybody. I was just going to stay at my parents and make sure that that habit was behind me. And thankfully it was. You know, I just took a few days to settle in and got back in the gym. It just, once that was out of my system, it's like my body says, now it's time to go back to what we do. Now it's time to get back on. I went to the gym. My second workout, I wanted to deadlift, my favorite lift. I did 405 for 3 reps. I thought I'd broken my back. Oh, fuck, I was so sore, I couldn't move. And all of a sudden, I knew that hill that I had to climb became a mountain. I'm looking, it's, 10,000 feet higher. I'm sitting here, how the hell did I ever pull 900 pounds? I'm at like 45% capacity now, and it's killing me. But that was fun. It gave me a chance to rebuild the foundation.
What were your parents kind of thinking in those times and during those days? It must have been very hard for them. Did they distance themselves from you quite a bit?
Yeah, they did. I think it only took about a year, less than that, but a year where they finally cut it off. And they're like, no more. It might not even have been a year. It might only been a few months where I was told not to come around again, because I think the biggest thing is, I would come over and I thought I was just talking to my mom, but I was expressing my sadness and anger for my wife taking my son and, everything that was good, basically. And I didn't know how to deal with it, and my head wasn't clear enough to know that I was probably being loud and yelling, and I wasn't yelling at my mom. I was yelling around my mom, and I'm thinking they were hurting enough already that they didn't want me dumping all of my shit on them.
Yeah, and being neural negative.
Yeah, and I think it just wore them out, and they're just like, you know what, don't come around. And so that hurt. That sucked. That really sucked. I think I talked to him 2 times during that 4-year period. So yeah, it was pretty rough.
Did you get any therapy, or are you just all the stuff you just said is how you worked through it?
You know what? I think I'm grateful because I feel like I'm incredibly blessed when it comes to therapy. It's like, I don't know if it's my ancestors or just a different part of me or somebody speaks to me. That little voice was my therapy. It just hit me at the right times, just hit the right moments with a lot of things. And if I just followed my heart and I just listened to that, it always worked out. You know, when the first time it ever really hit me was that first strongman competition. And that's when I realized this is where I'm going with my life. You know, when I went with my heart, things were awesome. And when I tried to think about them too much, you know, when I tried to think my way out of taking my wife to the airport with my son, I didn't listen to my heart, and it screwed me pretty bad. So, but no, I just, no therapy, just letting myself be led and feeling what was right in the moment. When I, like I said, just stop thinking and just go. It worked out.
Are you able to, like, are you able to speak to your son nowadays? Do you?
So I was talking to him during most of that period, most of that time. And I noticed when he was about 7 years old, I say they, but it was my ex-wife trying to distance themselves. I went to England twice during that time. The first time I got to see him every day because it was still pretty early on. I got to see him every day. We'd hang out. We'd have fun. I was in a hotel. She was living with her parents at the time. A couple years later, I was there for his birthday. I was there for a whole week. I did everything that his mom wanted me to do. I went and stayed where she wanted me to stay. And then she complained that it was too far of a drive. It was like 50 minutes. I'm like, this is where you told me to go. Out of that week, I got to see him for 2 one-hour occasions. And yeah, I couldn't afford to go over there anymore. That was like $3,000 or something. And, you know, I didn't have any money at that point. So I stayed on the trying to call him train as much as possible. You know, going from 5 times a week down to 4 times a week, down to every other day they'd answer, down to every few days they'd answer, then only on the weekends, and then they wouldn't answer. And I say they, it was my ex-wife wouldn't answer. You know, emails would be ignored. Voicemails would be ignored. You can only take so much of that. You know, when you hear that voicemail again, that little lady saying, please leave a message, it stabs at you every time, stabs at your heart. And, you know, I gave up after a while. And I took to writing in a little notebook the things I wish that I had taught my son. And because, you know, I always, my whole life, wanted a son. Ever since I was a little kid, I knew I was going to have a son. I took every lesson that I learned and I thought, how can I make this better? How can I teach this better? Because I want to teach my son better, like riding a bike. I wanted to teach my son how to do that. I remember cleaning out my garage when I was selling a lot of my stuff off. During that darkness, I found a box full of baseball mitts, one of which was right-handed, so for a lefty. I wasn't a lefty, but I remember finding that glove at a baseball field, and you know, it was like middle of the week, so it had been sitting there for a few days, and I took it home, and I thought to myself, I might need this glove because my son might be left-handed. And then I thought about when I found that glove, I was 9 years old. Like, what kind of 9-year-old thinks about that? So I had that glove for 20 years, waiting to teach my son how to throw a baseball. And, you know, all of that was taken away from me. So, you know, I'm not saying that it was totally my fault that it was taken away. I'm not trying to pass the buck on any of that. You know, and that's another thing that I learned in this whole thing, this whole ordeal, ownership. And I'm just going to segue right into it because this is important for people to realize that when you take ownership of your life, no matter what the hell has happened, that's when you take power over your life. That's when you take control. Doesn't matter if something bad happened to you. Take ownership of it. Accept the responsibility that it's your life. You're the one living it. You know, I could easily say, well, this happened to me and that happened to me and I'm a victim. Fuck that. If you want to change your life, you are not the victim. You are the leader of your life. You're the driver. You're the one who's got to take charge. You've got to decide what it is you want to do get up off your ass and do it. You know, you can sit there, life beats you down, and a lot of people will kick you while you're down there. But if you choose to stay down, that's your fault. You're the one who's got to get up and start making something of your life. You can't wait for a miracle. And this is probably just as important as what I just said. If you're waiting for a miracle, you're just sitting there waiting. Best thing that you can realize is that you're born with the miracle. Now, if you're thinking God's going to grant the miracle, well, if you think about God and his strength, God can see all time, past, present, future at the same time. He knows what you're going to go through, whether it's God or the universe, whatever you believe in, knows what you're going to go through. You were born with that fucking miracle. You don't have to wait for it. You just have to realize it. When you realize it, then you stand up, start doing something. You live like you've gotten a miracle. That's what changes things. It's not a sudden wish granted. It's your actions. So if you know that you've been granted the miracle and it's already in you, start living like it. That's how you change your life. And that's, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was what I was doing. The miracle had already been granted. I just started acting like it.
That's dope.
So, well, I want to know this then. So then you did your first competition back in 2017?
Coming back
to Strongman, like
Yeah.
when you were like 227.
October, well, I'd put on a couple pounds.
Okay.
When I started training, inside of 4 months, I gained 75 pounds.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It wasn't all good, but my body was like, oh God, calories, thank God.
the
'Cause
satellite cells know what the fuck's going on.
I'd only been eating once a day, once every other day.
Wow.
So my body sucked down the food quick. And
Yeah.
and then, you know, I got it to like 290 and dropped back down to about 250 after that. And then worked my way back up over the next almost 2 years. It was October 15th and 16th, 2017 was America's Strongest Man. It was my first show back.
What did that feel like?
Oh, a train running over me. It was heavy. We had an 1,100 pound yoke. We had a press medley that was a 250 dumbbell, a 400 log, and a 400 axle. I zeroed it. It was a 2-day show. And I remember after the first day, I woke up the next morning and it took me like 15 minutes to get out of bed. And thank God I was at an Airbnb because I went up and knocked on the back door of the owners. And I'm like, hey, y'all got any Advil? Please, like, give me some freaking anti-inflammatories. And I got in a hot bath and I started working myself loose. And I was able to do pretty well the second day. But I mean, it was a shock.
How were you able to like stop the urge to go find pain meds again, like Norco and shit? Because I mean, if that pain's back and you have an old habit, did you ever find yourself maybe trying that again a little bit, or did you figure out some new tactics to deal with that?
On both accounts, yes. The most important thing is to remember what you want your life to be like. It's like, I know what taking pain meds leads to. I know what taking meth leads to. I don't want my life to be like that. So I've had 3 surgeries over the last few years and an infection recently that was with rhabdo at the same time. This is the most physically painful experience I've ever been through. So I've had painkillers several times over the last few years, and it hadn't been an issue because I take them when I need them and pretty much only when I need them. You know, it's one of those things where if I start thinking, oh, I just kind of want to feel good right now, let me take some, I think that's not the way I want to live. That's not, I think there's some people would think of as prior addiction as a weakness. You know, if you know that you have a tendency to be addicted to these things, yeah, you have a tendency to be addicted in the future, higher likelihood. But if you're honest with yourself and you think, okay, I have a tendency to want this too much. Does that mean I can't ever have it? If you have no willpower, no self-control, then yes, don't freaking go there. But if you are honest and you say, okay, I can take these only to this point. And then if I start going past that point, and that's like, you know, a thought process. If I need it because I want to feel good, that's not okay. If I take it because this pain is screaming at me and I need to get out of bed and start doing something, then go for it. So if you're honest with yourself and you assess yourself and keep yourself in check like that, I feel like I'm stronger. I'm more capable of doing things correctly or safely than somebody, especially a newcomer who's never taken them before. Because I know the things to look for. I know the signs to look for. And I also know what withdrawals feel like. And I have gotten to the point where I did have some withdrawals. After surgery a couple years ago, I think it was my hernia surgery, I took them a little bit too long, and then I started to notice the withdrawal effects. But I'd already been there and done that.
What is that like, by the way?
It's like,
don't know.
It's like muscles throbbing and aching, and you feel sick, and you feel antsy, but not really sure why, and everything hurts, and you're kind of depressed, and you're getting the shits, and it's not fun. But I've already been through that, so I know what to expect. So therefore, it didn't faze me too much. It's like, okay, here's what comes next. Here's what comes next. If I had known that years ago, I would have been able to get off of the painkillers, because when I got off the painkillers and I started to have those withdrawals, I was like, God damn, what is this? Am I going to feel like this forever?
And then you took more.
And then you just drop back into it. Yeah, you fall right back in. But now I know that it's a temporary thing. And, it is what it is. You just make it through it a couple days. It's really not that bad. And the same thing with injuries. The more injuries you get, the less scared you are of them. Like, well, there went another chunk. It's going to take this to rehab. Got to keep going. Okay. There goes another 3 weeks or whatever. Like,
what's on tap next for you? Are you going to the Arnold? Are you going to compete in the World's Strongest Man again, or what you trying to do?
I would really love to compete in World's Strongest Man again. Last year, like I said, was a bit overwhelming. It was an incredible experience. It was a great time, but I tried to cram so much into preparation. I didn't realize that I was already strong enough. I was already good enough. If I had just maintained training and come in shape, I would have done really, really well. So I think with that kind of confidence, knowing that I am actually there, I don't need to make up for lost ground. I just need to come in hot. Then, I'll do a lot better. So hopefully I get another shot this year.
How has the sport changed in the last 10 years with some of these giants coming through?
Well, 2005, 2006, Strongman took a meteoric rise in the weights, the distances, the events, the results, and that has not stopped. So 5-year gap coming back.
Yeah, didn't you say 7 guys deadlifted 1,000 pounds at some event recently?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. See, I remember when Benedict Magnuson pulled 1,015, with just a belt on. That was right after Andy Bolton had done 1,003. So they were like the only 2 guys.
Benedict Magnuson still has the highest powerlifting deadlift of all time.
Yeah.
People need to recognize. without straps, the regular deadlift.
And no suit either. He's just raw.
Yeah, raw.
So, I coming from 2 guys who had ever done it to, guys like Eddie Hall pulling 1,100. And then a few months ago, it wasn't just one freak deadlifter who pulled a huge amount. Yeah. It was 7 deadlifters who pulled 1,000 pounds, one of which went to 1,045 or 1,050. I mean, so you've got these numbers that have inched their way up, but you've also got this whole field of top athletes that are staying right there at the top. It's not just one-offs. It's 10 or 12 guys that can do it. And then they're good at everything else too.
What's your thoughts on these bars they got? I hear some of the strongman guys making a big thing about the elephant bar, and some of these bars bend a little bit more. And is it a thing, or these guys just really fucking strong and people probably should not worry about it too much?
I mean, these guys are really freaking strong, but I've personally never pulled on an elephant bar. I did the Hummer tires at the Arnold.
And the elephant bar has more whip to it, so it bends, right? Yeah. And then it oscillates, and it kind of might give you a slight advantage as you're pulling the weight or something, right?
It depends on how you pull. If you're a real, explosive deadlifter, or if you have a tendency to use a little more back and you get forward, over your toes a little bit. It'll whip back and forth and pull you back to the ground. But if you're a steady puller, I think it gives you a big advantage.
Yeah, you slowly pull the slack out. Not that I've pulled 1,000 pounds, but you can pull more slack out of that bar slowly, so it makes sense.
Yeah, you pull the slack out, then you explode from there, and you don't get as much whip when you're at the knees.
Damn.
How was World's Strongest Man right here in Sacramento? It kind of blew my mind that it was here. Out of all the crazy locations that it normally is, it's like some random country in Africa and all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden,
I think it's here. It's this year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
is Africa a random country in Nsima?
No,
Yeah, it's just like
That sounded
just a random ass
No.
place.
sounded like a place of like hatred.
I said a random.
Lots of people came from there in origin.
I think like some folks
Will you
came in.
let me finish? I said a random ass country in Africa. I didn't say a random. No. And then it's
I don't know.
it's fairly random. You can't tell me that it's fucking organized. Like, yep, it's definitely going to be there. Like, no, it's fucking out of nowhere.
In Sacramento, you mean?
Yeah, and now it's randomly in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect. I think it was fate. It wasn't random. It was fate because it's a 2-hour drive. That's the
There you
only
go.
professional contest I haven't had to fly to my whole
that's awesome.
career.
That's sick.
You know, I'm not facing a 9 or 10 hour time change.
Yeah, it's here again, right? This year?
Yeah.
I believe so for the
That's
next
why I really
2 more
want to
years.
get in again
Let's
this year.
go. Sacramento, California. We're on the map.
I've got something fun I want to show you, Mark. Here, just
All right. Oh, I see
Check
the old
this out,
ST
man.
shirt.
OGST.
Yeah.
you gave me this in like 2007.
Yep.
2007. I've had this shirt all this time. It's actually one of my favorite shirts.
Oh, there you go.
Jacked in that shirt, man. I don't know why you kept the sweatshirt on the whole podcast.
But
Yeah, look at his forearms.
Yeah, dude.
You just, put it wherever you like. Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, man, I appreciated that. And you gave me one of those slingshots, one of the original way back in the day.
Long ass time ago.
Yeah, it still works like a charm too.
What kind of powerlifting numbers do you have? Like, do you squat pretty well? Do you bench press pretty well? Like, what does some of that look like?
My best bench was 506.
and then you blew out your pec too. So
that was pre-pec tear.
that's got to make it pretty difficult.
You know, I've thought about throwing the shirt on just to see because it seemed to. I strained my pecs a lot during that time, and the shirt always seemed to help with that. Kind of spared them. My best deadlift is 880, and my best that deadlift is from the floor, and it was kind of an accident. It was a misload. Supposed to be 805.
Oh.
And they had plates with kilos, they had pounds, they had hundreds, and they totally messed up the
pounds and kilos together.
Yeah, strongman contest, you know. So my cousin added it up, and it was 75-pound misload. Best squat, did 715 for 6 in training for Worlds.
Yeah, you guys get really strong on the squat. You do a lot of repetitions in training and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, that's touching the boxes.
Right. Yeah,
You know,
well, whatever.
Still,
And that was suited, but suited squat, I feel really good. Regular, without a suit, I got such long legs that it's hard for me to stop.
What's kind of your thoughts on wearing like extra stuff, like knee wraps and stuff? Like, it's pretty common in strongman for guys just to, I guess, basically just utilize whatever they need. And a lot of times you're utilizing it not just for your top sets, but for even the lighter sets, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to get the most weight possible, you know, or the most reps possible. So a lot of those guys, you use whatever you can. There's limitations to what you can use. You know, as far as single ply suits, you can't use any double ply or anything like that. A lot of contests won't allow you to use any kind of supportive gear like that. But you know, straps, I know we get a lot of flack for deadlifting with straps, but we have like 3 other grip events in a contest. So, you know, save your grip for farmers or a frame or whatever. And then hell, you can just pull more weight with straps. But yeah, I think, you know, I enjoy being able to use some of the equipment just because it makes it different. You know, training with a suit for World's Strongest Man was the first time I had put that suit on in 10 years. And I forgot what the pressure felt like, you know, doing the reps, my eyes bulging out, my ears ringing for the next day and a half.
Yeah, it makes a couple things easier, but it makes a bunch of other stuff a lot harder.
Yeah. It places some different stress on the body.
What would it take to get the call again for World's Strongest Man this coming year? And also, I mean, I know you had an injury in the last year's event, but do you feel that you'll be able to surpass your highest competition numbers and your highest level of strength in the past? Like, what would that look like for you?
I think I can be better than ever. Yeah. I was pushing better than ever numbers last year, pre-injury, with the exception of log press, overhead, and axle. My overhead press suffered a little bit because I tore my rotator cuff and had to have that bolted back on. And, got a nice little scar there. It took a while to recover from that, but you know, my deadlift had been better than ever. My squat had been better than ever, like I just mentioned. And this year, I think I can absolutely surpass all my old numbers. To get there, to answer the first question, I did win a few Champions League competitions last year.
Okay.
So hopefully I get an outside invite. You know, if I'm showing that my training numbers are better than ever, that will help with that decision. They're not going to have any more Giants Lives, I don't think, beforehand this year, which is the direct qualifying route. 1 through 3 in those competitions qualify for World's Strongest Man. They had a bunch of them after Worlds last year, like 4 or 5 of them. But like I said, I don't see any on the roster pre-World's Strongest Man this year. So those guys have qualified, which a lot of those spots were filled by the same person. So they have maybe 10 qualified athletes and then 25 total spots open.
Okay.
So there will be a lot of special invites handed out. And hopefully I get that shot again, because I'd love to prove that I'm better than I was. And I took 5th 3 times in a row, back in the day. I would love more than anything to beat that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 5th place, starting out in the middle of the pack and hanging on. I was 5th place, starting at the back of the pack and working my way up. And I was 5th place, starting in 1st place and falling back. It's just 5th was the number. I just want better than that.
Who's going to win this boxing match between Eddie Hall and Hapthor Bjornsson?
If Eddie keeps giving him more time, Hapthor's getting better and better, man. You know, I would have said Eddie right out, but Hapthor's just steadily improving.
He's looking amazing too.
Yeah,
he's getting crazy, lean. It looks like he's like getting ready for a bodybuilding show or something.
Yeah, well, he's in shape. And the thing that I'm most impressed with is he looks like he's starting to get light on his feet and able to move. And then if he can do that and he can stay moving, he's got the reach. If he can keep Eddie out, then I think Eddie will tire quickly. So Eddie's going to have to throw that heat fast.
It's hard to pick, because they're both so resilient and they're both so talented.
Any footage?
I could probably find something.
Yeah, there's a little bit of stuff for them hitting bags and hitting other people and stuff. I mean, Eddie Hall, he looks pretty well versed in the way that he throws his punches. It looks like he's been doing it for a while. And Hapthor, it looked like it was a lot newer for him. But as you're saying, I agree with what you're saying. It looks like he's throwing crisper and crisper punches as he's moving along, because it looks like he's really working on it.
Yeah, Eddie's giving him more and more time. I think that bicep tear was a blessing for Thor, just because Thor was on his way up at that moment. Is this
Hapthor in his first
Devin
boxing
the Rat
match.
Yeah.
That array of jabs coming from Hapthor would be fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Our guy getting tackled. Yeah.
We have a power lifter here that his name's Andre Malanichev. Are you familiar with Andre Malanichev? Yeah, all-time world record holder in the total, and he loves watching this stuff, and he's like, I think I can beat Hapthor. He's got these weaknesses he's been picking up on, but I don't know.
This
Andre,
might be where the guys that retire go into prize fighting.
Right.
Right.
This stuff is so hard. I did some boxing when I was young, and it is a whole nother world to be in there and be just even sparring with somebody else is wild.
Yeah.
If you're hitting a bag and you're hitting gloves and all that stuff, that's one thing. But once you're standing across the ring from your opponent and they are, they're powerful as well, and they know how to throw a punch and they know how to take a punch and they know how to move their head, it gets to be crazy. Things that you would never think that you would do. You'd never think that you would throw your arms up and like panic.
Well, the bag doesn't hit back.
But yeah, right. But if someone pops you pretty good, like you do start to lose like sight of what it was you were trying to do.
What was it? Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
It is very true. Or if you get tired. I mean, I'm sure you've had that happen in strongman competitions. That is like demoralizing. Your legs aren't under you anymore. You're like, I'm not even halfway done with this event. I'm going to look like a real fool. Or when your grip goes, it's gone. It's not coming back.
It's over. Yeah.
It's over.
That's something I have to work with my clients. I call it seeing through the fog. You know, when you get gassed and everything, the world seems to like close in around you and, you know, lights go down, everything gets dim. You got that panic screaming in your brain to quit. You just got to buckle down and turn the fog lights on. You got to tell your body to keep moving forward anyway. It takes practice because it's scary to work through it. But the more you work through it, it's kind of going back to that being comfortable. You know, when you used to feeling the withdrawals, you can get through the withdrawals easier. If you're used to working in the fog, you could start pushing through the fog. You drive through the fog easier. So you just buckle down, put the headlights on or the fog lights on, keep going. Because everybody can keep going for a minute. You know, you don't have to breathe for a minute. You can keep going. That's what I tell all my guys. You can breathe when you're done.
Breathe when you're done.
Yeah, you'll take the punishment. It's going to suck, but...
How are you feeling every day nowadays? You know, you mentioned those things where you practice some gratitude and like, and you mentioned how you believe that you're going to be better and stronger than ever. How are you feeling on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, so mentally, you know, the gratitude's a big thing for me. It's every Monday I do a Monday gratitude on Instagram. Just trying to share some of the lessons that I've learned. It literally saved my life. It's changed my life and it's saved my life. So I look back at, you know, all these really devastating, you know, really, really shitty experiences. And I mean, like I'm doing now, I still have a smile on my face because, I mean, one way that you can find gratitude in the worst experiences of your life is, you know, when you die, at least you didn't live a boring life. You sucked the juice out of life. You squeezed the juice out of life. We're born with all these emotions. You know, all the way from sad and despair to bliss and joy, everything in between. If you spend all of your time in the positive, you got no contrast. You have no idea how good your life is. And that's why a lot of people nowadays have it so easy that they create struggle. You know what I mean? They need real struggle. We don't even need to get into this.
No, we do need to get into this. Right. You fill your time in with anxiety. And
exactly.
You always feel the need to fill everything in all the time. And it's hard for you to be grateful for the fact that you're sitting in an air-conditioned room or climate-controlled room. You have Wi-Fi, you have access to the internet. Instead, we're looking at the negative comment that somebody made, and we're spending minutes and hours researching that person. We're clicking on their profile, we're checking it out, we're screen capturing it, and then we'll share it with our buddies. We'll say, "Look at this asshole," and they're like, "Oh my God!" Now they're mad. And now they're checking out that person. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like we got to create a lot of this stuff.
It's that victim mentality. People want to have it harder than everybody else. They want to say their life is worse. And well, it's hardwired into us to have struggle. And if there's not enough real struggle, we'll create it. We'll find a way to invent it. And you know, that's where my gratitude and realizing or looking back to where I've been makes it a little bit easier for me to remember that what I've got now is just icing. It's all icing on top of the cake.
How grateful are you for your parents to take you back in after you straightened yourself out?
Yeah, you know, that was probably a big, you know, reach for them. It was a big step for them to, you know, they called me, wanted me to come out, but to just welcome me back into the home. And it wasn't easy at first. It's a little bit rocky. But, you know, to be fair, one of the things that happened, my mom ended up in the hospital like 3 weeks after I got there, just one of many to come. And, you know, I was there. My dad had to work all the time, so I would cook food. I'd keep the house going. I'd go and visit my mom. And I remember him saying, you know, I'm really grateful that you're here. And I remember that meant a lot to me because that meant that, you know, the I guess the tension between us had been lifted. And, you know, we were great friends my whole life. And, you know, he was my best friend. So like to have that time where I've lost my best friend, my dad and my best friend, you know, and then to get him back like that was pretty awesome. Yeah. But to go back to what you were saying a minute ago, so emotionally I'm feeling awesome. Physically, pretty beat up sometimes. Well, to be fair, I did a contest in Turkey. You know, after World's Strongest Man, I had a lot of contests. I had a lot of speaking engagements. I had a lot of, you know, contests that I would judge and do stuff at. So I was traveling a lot. I got COVID, just beat up, really run down. And I think when I got to this Champions League finals in Turkey, I was so worn out that I got one of the many scratches that you get at a contest. One of them must have gotten a little bacteria in it. And what would have otherwise been a nothing issue, my system was so run down that it took foothold. And I got an infection that nearly killed me. You know, I got rhabdo from the contest, which is painful enough. And I got this infection that, I mean, it started in my ankle, and I started feeling it when I was flying home. I was halfway across the Atlantic. By the time I landed in San Francisco, I could hardly walk. So I thought it was a blood clot. I got to Reno, which is just a 45-minute flight. Once I landed there, I told my girlfriend, look, we got to go to the hospital because something's wrong. And I spent the next 8 days in the hospital fighting for my life with sepsis and rhabdo. And, and I remember, you know, in some point during that delirium, a surgeon coming in and talking about the possibility of cutting my leg off or cutting it open from, you know, top to bottom, because cutting it off wouldn't have done any good. It already spread up to my groin and I was fully septic. And yeah, so thankfully he didn't cut. He was a pretty sharp guy. He said, you know what, we're just going to see what your body does. And I remember telling him, like, look, I'm really good at healing, so just give it a chance. Like, I've broken so many things. I'm really good at this point. Yeah. So, yeah, thankfully the antibiotics kicked in and started to turn the tide. And, you know, the 4 days of delirium turned into just 4 more days of some of the worst pain I've ever been through. But then I had 3 weeks of a PICC line. I'd have to go in and get IV antibiotics every day. And, you know, just slowly but surely beat the infection, lost 36 pounds of body weight. And just, I mean, that hormone crash, basically coming after a contest, right into a hospital where you're stuck laying down. I was weak as a kitten, felt like shit. And, you know, I started training again, and those first few workouts, even still, you know, 3 weeks of 2 days a week training, really light. And last week I did 3 days, and I could really tell it took me a few days to sleep right again. So I think once everything kind of mellows out and balances itself, I'll start making some real progress again. But yeah, it's pretty tough at the moment. Right. You got to draw back on the experiences that you've gone through. You know, it's tough right now. Everything hurts. Everything sucks. But you just keep pushing through. You know, tomorrow's another day. Just get up, plan on kicking ass. And if you don't, you get up the next day, plan on kicking ass then. Always got another chance.
All right. So outside of the pain meds that you took in the past to help, like, you know, help you not feel pain, what helps with some recovery? Because I feel like you've probably done almost everything under the sun as far as recovery tactics. So what's actually been super beneficial for you?
You know, I've tried everything. And thank God I had those compression sleeves, the little blow up compression sleeves, because I got my girlfriend to bring those into the hospital on like day 3 to start pushing some of that swelling in the infected area, the blood out of my leg, and get healthy antibiotic full blood. And I think that helped me get over the infection. I think that was one of the reasons they didn't have to cut me open. So that's one. Those are great, especially after, you know, heavy yoke or heavy farmers, stuff like that. Being on a diet, a consistent diet, I've been, like I said earlier, I was working with Jon Andersen and I work with Nathan Payton, really sharp guys. If you stay on a consistent diet, you give your body everything it needs. Staying flexible. Staying flexible is important, especially the older you get. It really plays in. Oh man, what else? Let's see. So massage, chiropractic.
Do any cold or heat?
I've always loved cryotherapy, but I've just started doing it again. And I do it in the morning, my shower, first thing. And yeah, it keeps me pumped going through the day. But as far as like full immersion, I haven't done that. I live in an apartment, so I don't have a whole lot of options to, I don't fit in my bathtub, so I can't really fill it and dunk myself. But I do like doing that. I think that, 3 minutes or less is plenty, especially if you do it right after workout, because the whole inflammatory response and all that stuff. If you do it the next day, you can go a little longer. And I think there's like a 6-hour window or something they talk about. But yeah, if you go to sleep, wake up the next day after your workout, and you can go for 5 to 10 minutes. And I think that it's more spiritual, more brain training than anything.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, want to take us on out of here, buddy?
Sure thing. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Please like and comment something down below. Give our guests a shout out. That would be very appreciative. And please make sure you guys follow the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where are you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram, YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Travis, where can they find you and all your stuff?
Travis Ortmayer on Instagram. Or Travis Ortmayer or Texas Stoneman, all one word, .com is my website. If you're interested in coaching, that's where you want to hit up. Send me a message on Instagram. I check those all the time too.
Awesome having you here today. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me out, man. I hope somebody learned something from my story.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.